Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Story Studio podcast, or as I said last time, the Story Solution podcast, which is not correct. It's not right. Our guest today is Joel Quinn. He's one of our writers. He also has a new book out called, I feel like I want to save the title as a punchline. Like I want to get to that. So we'll just save that. But first, I do want to point out that we really do have a dueling beard situation, and that we do have... Joel is broadcasting from the Upside Down in Stranger Things. He's broadcasting from the black.
I noticed that. I'm like, I want to know where our alien is. There's usually an alien like looking to tack him over the shoulder. It's just not there this time.
I had to climb up to the attic just about because the family's here, and although they love me, and I'm sure it's proof that they love me, that they want to be with me, they won't stop. So I had to lock myself away.
Oh, that's like
Dave's comment on that?
Dave has one of those.
Well, Dave's trying to talk. Not gonna let him.
Oh, wow, Dave's. You know what it's like? It's like we put Dave in the dungeon.
You guys who aren't on YouTube are really missing out on the Dave show over here. He's wringing its neck.
Jesus, that's okay. We have Dave 2.0 anyway. Like it doesn't matter. This is the perfect episode for Dave to finally just peter out.
I think it's part of a long con. He's going to stop showing up. You'll be like, you can never hear me.
I think he cut his mic. I think that's what he does. You know what this is like? This is like in one of those movies where the guy is taking the fake phone call, but he's got his hand over the hang up button, and he's just having a fake call with the boss or whatever. This is what Dave's doing.
And then the phone rings.
Can you hear me? Fletch,
now we can.
Face pretends the microphone's not working, although more tragic and less funny than that.
Yes, just like that. All right, Dave. Dave is back now. So what were you going to say about your family and how much you love them?
I was going to say I'd be hiding in an attic like Anne Frank.
Rare Anne Frank reference on this.
That was a long time to wait for an Anne Frank.
Right, just waiting on that. Yeah.
Isn't she just a couple steps removed from Hitler? It's kind of early, Dave.
I figured I would go the other side.
Yeah, it's a very short jaunt from her attic to a Hitler joke.
I feel the need to talk about our dislike of Hitler for a little bit after this. I just want to go into that. It's not all right. Okay, so something cool. We have an extra.
Would be a really funny story. Is like a Hitler story, but like he gets nabbed for some Me Too type thing.
Do you see that thing where I try to divert and I got pulled right back? It's like The Godfather 3. Try to get away from the Hitler jokes and they pull me right back in.
No, but see, Dave knows it's a good idea. He just wants to. Come on, Dave, explore it with me.
Yeah, there's going to be a new hashtag called Mich auch.
I'm waiting for the anger emails.
All right, so speaking of anger emails, something cool. Anybody have something cool?
Does the new guy go first? I can go first.
Yeah, go first, new guy.
So I'm a pretty big fan of vinyl records. I like to go to flea markets and pick up vinyl and stuff. And I just found one that I'd been looking for, and that is Edgar Winter's White Trash album, the recycled album. It's a great album, and I urge anybody to go find it and listen to it in any form, but particularly in vinyl. That's my.
I was just going to say, you said you've been searching for it forever. It's really rare. Go out and get it. Yeah.
What's the best thing about the album?
Because it's an Edgar Winter White Trash album, nobody's heard of it. Therefore, the album hasn't been listened to. So it's a really
much like my pleas.
That was true of Sean's mom's copies of Mr. Destiny as well. They were pristine.
Fact.
Yeah, that's the stuff I look for. I look for like the Alan Parsons Project, Jethro Tull, because I know nobody's listened to them and they're going to be in good shape.
I like how your musical tastes are real pragmatic.
Yeah.
What niche can I corner?
The unlistened to niche, apparently. That's my genre.
Old dudes with really long hair.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave? How have you survived the hurricane?
Yeah.
Is that your something cool that you're still
Oh,
alive?
man, I forgot. We're missing worst show ever material here.
No, it went well. I somehow avoided everything. So yeah.
He said it went well, like he invited it. Yeah, it was fine. We had tea.
Dave was inviting it. His neighbors were shooting at it.
Dorian was on his best manners.
Yes. No. A cold front came in at the last minute, pushed it back a little. So my power went out a few times, but not like for a week or two like I feared and happened every other year that I've existed here in this suckhole of a fucking state. So yeah,
Dave's got Hurricane Dorian in his basement, just churning. Where's all this wind coming from?
it's churning and feeding on my hate.
Well, at least it won't
Category
go hungry.
6. What?
I said at least it won't go hungry.
No, it won't.
That isn't something cool, though. Well, maybe it is. I guess it is because you avoided the hurricane. That's something cool.
I think survival is
It's pretty cool
for Dave most of the time. Yeah.
All right.
I don't think he expects to make it week to week. So I think that
I woke up, didn't die in my sleep.
I could talk about some. Never mind.
no, don't ever do that. If you introduce something and say never mind, we automatically know it's worth sharing.
No, 2 nights ago, one of my wife's friends' husbands died in her sleep, and he's like my age.
Oh.
All right, something cool from Dave. All right.
Not like what I expected.
Can we go back to Hitler? Is that a thing?
Seriously.
Welcome, new listeners.
Wow. All right. Well, John, do you have anything cool?
No, I do actually. I've started listening to the audiobook for Everything is Fucked by Mark Manson, which I'm enjoying. I'm not terribly far into it. He's the same guy who did The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which I haven't read, but that I kind of want to. And I mean, clearly the guy's got, he got like, you know, branded with he's got the same branding angle as me apparently, because it's Everything is Fucking. And, you know, it's very.
Who the hell would put fuck in their title?
Right, exactly. Who would do that?
Irresponsible, I might add.
So we're in good company. It is spelled F asterisk CK, not F asterisk UCK, which is the other popular spelling. But I'm kind of enjoying it because I'm on this jag right now of, I don't know, everything kind of is fucked. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. I can get behind the idea that everything's fucked. And it just talks about the lack of hope that's in the modern human condition. And because we're just kind of spinning, it's very much in line with the story solution. Like, a lot of people aren't operating with purpose or meaning for their lives, and because everything's fucked. So anyway, I'm listening to that right now and enjoying it.
Sounds like a real bring me up.
Well, it actually brought me down first because I was like, yeah, I'm agreeing with everything. This sucks.
I'm gonna go on a shooting spree.
But then it lifts back up. He's just hooking you in.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone yesterday who is a real, like, optimistic, placid type person, and they just started talking about how, like, things were going to shit, and I'm like, this is what I get when I talk to Dave. You are not the type of person I need to hear this from. So it was like, man, it's just. The source does matter. If I hear that everything is fucked from Dave, like, I don't feel bad. I'm just like, oh, that's status quo. But there's some people who can say everything's fucked, and I'm like, man, if you're thinking that way,
split your wrists.
Well, I mean, I sent a list email a little while ago that basically the line could have been everything is fucked, the subject line. Like, I'm feeling this way increasingly, and we have run across, like, I'm thinking of somebody else. So when Austin was on the show, you know, talking about the Join the Story project, his origin story on that was everything's fucked. So, yeah, I mean, it's pervasive attitude right now, and he's pretty optimistic, upbeat guy.
Yeah, so my something cool is a book called The Corrections, which...
by Jonathan Franzen.
Yeah, I read it, or I bought it like 15 years ago.
I bought it around the same time, I think, and I have also not read it.
I bought it when it was on an end cap at Barnes & Noble because it was the hot new release. Yeah. And I wanted to read it forever ago. I didn't. I don't think I even moved my copy from Cincinnati to here. I think it was in the books I gave away. But I picked it up on audio because I just felt like I like to read things that have something in common with the thing I'm trying to write at any given time. And my work in progress is like family bullshit, like what he's doing in The Corrections. And it's kind of interesting. There's two parts to this that are interesting. The first is that I am really enjoying the book. And there's a couple things. First of all the people in the book are pretty unlikable. Like, they're just a bunch of unlikable people doing unlikable things.
Kind of unlikable?
Yes, I heard that, but I didn't know that before I read it. I only read that because this is the second part of the story. So So I am enjoying it. And one of the things I'm enjoying about it is a book like that would have intimidated the shit out of me 15 years ago, right, when I picked it up. It's like, I mean, I'd never read or written anything at that point. And even if I'd read it a few years ago, I would have felt pretty intimidated. But I'm listening to it now and thinking, I get what he's doing. I admire what he's doing. I can see it, but I don't feel intimidated by what he's doing. I can put some of this stuff together. I can write this kind of story. And I'm feeling really good about it, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm thinking, you know, because this is not a commercial project. This is something I'm doing in the company that, like, I just want to write this book. It doesn't really have a funnel. It's not a series. It's not going anywhere. So I'm feeling really good because how much I am enjoying Franzen's book, even though the characters are all assholes and whatever. And then
is it like the written version of Girls?
No. I mean, I see the parallel, but no. I go. He does a lot of things that, like, Johnny, you'll know I really like the way he uses the word corrections throughout the book as, like, thematic, and it's very cool.
Well, I actually don't even know, without going too far down a rabbit hole, like I haven't read the book despite knowing who the author was. So what does the corrections refer to if that's not a long answer?
It depends on whose turn in the story it is. So, for example, the first guy you spend a long time with is Chip, who's like the fuck-up kid in the family.
Does he say right?
No, he doesn't. But he writes a screenplay, and he feels like it's been misinterpreted, and if only he could get it back and make a few corrections on it, the world would understand him in a better way.
Oh, so I already like that idea.
Yeah, you would really like this, Johnny. It is, when I said literary as fuck before we read or wrote Axis, this is kind of one of those books that was in my head. And so that's why I wanted to visit it now before writing this. Anyway, the punchline to this whole thing is I finally go and I want to read some reviews and see what other people think about this book. Everyone hates the book.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was going to predict that.
Yeah, it's got 3 stars. You know,
he's like shit on a whole bunch of other writers, and he's like this big literary snob. So I think,
oh well, fuck that guy. I hate guys like that. But the whole point that, like, it's a little meandering, and, like, my big worry about this book, like, and it's a big.
Maybe
worry.
I'll let you finish it before picking it up.
But my big worry with this book is that it's just too masturbatory. It's just a pile of steaming shit. And
well, that'll help you with your confidence for your book, then.
Right, exactly.
That'll be the review for your book.
That's the whole point. I was feeling good about it. I went and looked at these reviews, and they're like, "This is a masturbatory pile of shit."
Some random guy named Joe's gonna leave a horrible review.
Yeah, I'm
Okay, I don't know if we can explain why that's funny, but it is.
All right. Anyway, really, I don't know how to feel about it, but I'm still excited about my project, The End.
All right, yay. Okay, so getting to why we have Joel on today is Joel has a book that's coming out. See, I never know how to say this because it's next week it's next Wednesday as we record, but it's a lot of you are going to hear this on audio, so it's probably already out for most of you. So that would be what, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. The 10th of September, Joel's new book is coming out, and it is called, Joel, what's it called?
Fuck the details.
And the tagline is fewer words, sharper stories.
That's correct.
So can you explain
Which really does describe your writing style too, like just in a sentence.
Well, okay. So quickly before I ask you the next question, if you guys want to see like the official description, if you're curious, I have this on hand. I want to get it out of the way once. We do have a short link to Fuck the Details. It's Sterling. Well, not a short link. It's the page on our site, sterlingandstone.net/F the details. But Joel, can you tell us what that means to fuck the details?
Yeah, it's mostly some people would say it's instruction, but it's really guidelines. And what I think about when I try to write description, and that is, it's okay to use fewer words. You don't have to describe every tiny little detail of something, because chances are the reader knows what grass looks like. They know what pizza tastes like. They know what that shit looks like.
You don't know what Tom Clancy grass looks like, though.
You're right. I don't.
Or Tom Clancy pizza.
Yeah, man. But
Dave's gonna insert shit like that all the time. You can't take the beat. Like, don't let him finish.
Do you remember at the
pull those
last
through
summit
him.
when all he would say is he'd punctuate every conversation with
Pornhub.
Pornhub.
He might have been a little woozy when he was doing that.
Pornhub punctuation, though, that seemed to, it certainly gets me more excited for the show. No, it's that's it. It's really how I approach description, and not necessarily how another should approach it, but it's mostly saying that it's okay to use fewer words. It's okay to rely on the reader to do some of the work for you. You don't have to spoon feed them or hold their hand. They're actually pretty smart and can create pretty vivid images in their own mind. So
Now, I've read the book, so I actually know the answer to this. But how do you decide? Like, what is something where you decide this is worth some description, and this is something that I just need to get through because the story is more important at this point?
a lot of it is based on who it's going to be important to in the story, you know, and there are a couple of sections, like examples that I use of, you know, what the main character sees, and it's very clear that a lot of what I am writing down in that fake description is just shit that the author knew and thought was awesome, you know. But then when you go back and look at it, and you realize these aren't things that character would necessarily think about, and
or remotely care about. Like, that's it too. It's not even the thinking. It's the, I know this character. I've spent a few chapters with this guy now, and I'm going to argue he actively wouldn't care about this thing the author's telling me about.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I learned early on, because I wanted to write from reading. You know, I read a lot of books when I was young, and really wanted to be that guy. I was like, I want people to feel the same way when they read one of my books that I feel reading this book right now. And then I started to read really dense science fiction, and started falling into that exposition trap where everything's going along really great, and all of a sudden there's 3 pages of some guy just talking about how the nuts and bolts of some bullshit that he created works because he needed to know it. You know, he needed to know how the teleporter works so that he could write the rest of the book.
He left it in there for everyone else.
Yes. And when you're a kid, especially, it blew my mind. I'm like, why would you do this? Because I don't know what any of that. And so at the time, I assumed it was an adult thing. This is something that people smarter than me get. So fine, I would just skip it. And then I found that when I got older and I came across passages like that, I skipped those too. So it's just a thing that I started to dislike.
So you never grew out of it.
Nope, never
I
did.
love when a big fantasy book opens up with 25 pages explaining the history of the world.
Well, in fantasy, that's expected almost.
No, it's too much.
Well,
not
it's
good
not
fantasy.
And all the songs that were sung.
I don't know if it's even genre. If you look at it's a stylistic thing that's getting less and less okay over time because we're more immediate now as a
Yeah, because
culture.
everything's fucked.
Right. But if you're watching like a movie, okay, take Grapes of Wrath, right? If you read Grapes of Wrath, it has an entire chapter before you even get to Tom Joad. Like there's this whole thing where it's just kind of slow, and they're introducing the Dust Bowl, and it's just really slow and descriptive. Now, I mean, Steinbeck could probably get away with that even more, but I think the point is most storytellers can't get away with that because now we expect to be in the story, in the POV. We want to know. We don't want long description. And, you know, that long establishing opening shot that fantasy books have, that's because they're fantasy books. And the people who are like...
Well, there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. I'm talking about the bad ways that is just information overload. And
well, you can make it interesting. I mean, Stephen King.
A lot of times it's the author clearing his throat is all.
It can be, but like I know the Tommyknockers has a whole. I think it's the Tommyknockers has a whole section where Stephen King. It's just like the town, and it's told in an omniscient POV, and it's a whole chapter about the town. But King writes I realize this is different. It's description, but it's like place setting as well. But King does those in such an engaging voice that it's like, oh, okay, you're going to tell me about every little bit of thing about the town, but I'm still engaged. It's like how scenes where nothing's happening can still be really magnetic and compel you forward if they're written a certain way.
And of course, I'm certainly not saying, don't do it at all or don't do it a certain way or anything like that. I'm just saying that there are things that a reader is going to skip over, or a certain kind of reader. They're just going to do it. So if you want to make room for a little more story, go ahead and don't include that shit.
Well, let's hit the why, right? Because I mean, the tagline is fewer words, sharper stories for a reason. So fewer words should appeal, I would hope, to the writers who are like, oh, okay, I'm not going to write 3 paragraphs of description. That's going to save me 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And for the reader and ultimately the author's sales, we're talking about a sharper story means something that you just zip through and want the next one and leave positive reviews and all that.
Right.
Would you agree that those are the major whys of fucking the details?
I would agree with that completely. And it's also a lot about speed bumps or stutters, in that you don't want to put anything in the way of the reader getting to the next thing. That's not to say that you can't let them linger, that a nice turn of a phrase is something you can reward a reader with. But if, a lot of people are listening to things in the car, they've got 15 minutes. They have just a couple minutes while they're in line at the DMV, or maybe 70 minutes at the line at the DMV, depending. But, a lot of people are consuming in 2 ways. One is they eat it all at once, like they'll binge watch something, or they do little tiny bites when they get the time. So a sharper story with fewer words is a way to get more story to somebody in less time. It's just a way for them to consume it in chunks, as opposed to having to slog through, pages and pages. Not that that's not rewarding, but.
So
do you ever go the other way? Sorry,
go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Do you ever go the other way where you feel like, man, this either yourself as a writer or a reader, where you get to a passage and you think, okay, well, this really deserves some time, some description, because it's like a camera shot. Like your camera is spending more time here for a specific reason, and you enjoy that as a reader, or you think, man, I need to spend a few paragraphs describing this. Like, what are those scenarios if they exist?
Like, as a reader, it's less often that I will wish we had lingered longer on something.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Usually, if it's already described well, and if it's something that, because it's a thing that I mentioned, if you can leverage common knowledge or leverage the reader's experiences and perceptions, or perspective rather, then they already know what all of that stuff looks like. So oftentimes there's no reason to linger on a description. You just trust that they get it. And then again, there's no hard and fast rule. There's nothing to say, maybe I should have told him what color the guy's eyes are, or maybe I should have said what her perfume smells like.
Well, I think there's a very general rule that you have, which is, are you describing this thing for you or for the reader?
Right. Why are you describing it? 'Cause when you describe, like you said, the perfume example, like if you're talking about, there's 2 people and one of them is like entranced by this woman wearing perfume, then I think it's appropriate to talk,
or
to go
disgusted,
to rhapsodize.
Right? There has to be a reason. It's like one thing Bonnie always tags on. I've seen her tag it on every single person in the company. Like, it doesn't matter who's writing it. I'll see her tag something that says, like, what is the point of this? Like, if they're noticing the smell, like, because every single thing that you say, you can turn into a character moment. Yeah. So, like, if somebody smells perfume, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? It can't be an indifferent thing.
For Dave, it's a bad thing.
It's a bad.
I'm sitting in a restaurant trying to eat, and they sit someone next to me that just reeks of perfume. Yeah, it's a bad thing.
So if we were writing Dave, we would definitely talk about the perfume.
But it's a trap sometimes that writers fall into, and that is, they're told you have to engage all the senses. So they will just throw that shit in there. Oh, he smelled perfume, or he tasted this, or he touched that. And even though oftentimes they think, well, that's how you engage a reader, is you explore these senses so they get a feel of what everything's going. But if the character wouldn't necessarily be aware of that, don't include it.
Yeah, if they're going to like a new place or something and it smells exotic or different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when you do let the reader fill in the details, especially about everyday sort of things, they feel more involved in the story because they're filling it in.
Yeah, I mean, in On Writing, Stephen King says that description should begin in the author's mind but finish in the reader's. He has this whole section about how you should describe the interesting details that pique attention or curiosity in the reader, and then leave the reader to fill in the rest. You aren't going to give every little detail.
I think it's the thing that we always come back to, which is you as the creator are in control of the camera. You decide what shots they're getting. You decide what order of information. And yeah, you want to engage them in their senses, but I think ultimately the only sense that really matters most is emotion. Like, are you grabbing them on an emotional level? Are you involving them in the story? and you're not necessarily going to involve them in the story by talking about what the knife looks like, right?
Right. Yeah, and there is a specific passage in the book about that, about what, again, obviously it's what the author thought was cool about the scene and not necessarily what the character was going to be thinking about. And when you talk about emotions, I think that's what the story is. You know, it's not necessarily the description. It's the emotion. It's the engagement. And if you can save words in description and then use those words to engage the reader with emotion, that's going to be a better story, regardless of genre or what you're writing about. Anything that the reader feels ownership of, you know, and those images that they create in their mind, they own. You know, I just sort of guided their hand, but they painted it, you know. So that's what people love about a lot of these stories. It's you know, that's my story because they experienced it. You know, it's much more easy to sound stupid. Anyways, it's much easier to
you're giving yourself more rope to hang yourself with.
I know.
Basically.
Yeah, pretty much. It's easier to
I didn't mean you personally, Joel. I meant that I'm trying to help you with your point, if I'm understanding it right.
I am. But now I lost what I was going to say.
Damn it.
Yep, I agree with everything.
I think level of detail can also serve as a little bit about the character's psychological profile. Like somebody with OCD might be noticing a lot.
Yes. But that's what we mean by make those details in the character moments. Otherwise, you're wasting the reader's time.
But somebody that's sociopathic, or like, just say you have this horrible boss, and he just kind of like views everyone as like nuisances or whatever. Like as he's walking to the office, he's like, well, there's plain face, or, you know, he's just thinking of people in very, very like short nothing. You get a feel for what he's like versus, you know, a nicer, warmer character.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a personal detail that I can add to this. So, so Joel's writing style is very rat-a-tat. It's very just like boom, boom, boom. There's short, punchy sentences. And I actually really like it.
Joel has mad respect for people's time. So whether it's in a story meeting, whether it's in an actual story, he wants to get to the point. He doesn't want to waste time. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to have a good time, but he's efficient.
So what's interesting about this for me is that as much as I enjoy Joel's writing style, it's nothing like my writing style. Like I actually am.
No, they're opposite almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm indulgent. Like I really do. I do settle in. I'm less flowery, but just as we're both indulgent.
Yeah, I would say Johnny's actually more verbose than me, but not as flowery.
Wow.
So I would be. It would be real easy for me listening to this, and there are probably some of you who are like, "Well, that's great for writers like Joel, who write with that voice," but I'm different. But I'm also, the other thing that I'm doing right now is I want to tell this story.
Hey, good luck trying to tell. I know exactly where you're going. Good luck.
Yeah, I want to tell this story in full at some point. Because I think there's a lot of really good lessons, like really good lessons. So, and I think that Neve has actually already flagged it for when I can tell this story, because I'm not through the project. That's why I can't tell the story. But I'm in the midst right now I've been working on a project for a really long time that just doesn't want to go, a fiction project. And the punchline on this is that after about 90,000 words, I'm just starting over.
He's pulling a Dave.
Yeah, there's no way that I can do it. So I'm starting over. And one of the things that Sean and I went back and forth a lot, like, well, should I try to retool what's there and blah, blah, blah. And the decision was, no, it makes more sense to start totally fresh because I know the story. I can do it again and I'll do it better. But I wanted to read through what I did to mine little details, like not for an outline, but just like, okay, there's something I want to include. So I'm reading it, but because I know that I'm just mining details, I'm moving. I'm only moving as slow as I have to. Like I'm actively trying to move quickly because I don't want to waste time, and it's 90,000 words. And what I found myself doing is exactly what Joel described on just a different level, where I'm reading through and I'm like, oh, well, here comes a bunch of description, and I can just keep skipping through that. And what I've said to Robin a few times, because she's out there today while I've been reading, is it's so clear to me that like this book it doesn't go anywhere. I think it's well written. I think it's interesting in little sections. I think the chapters, some of them are kind of interesting, but as a whole, the book just fucking walks in circles. And I'm like, it's so obvious to me. And I'm like, why did I not see this? Why did Sean not tell me? And then I'm like, well, probably because he doesn't want to say, no, just stop and start over. Like we tried to figure it out together. But I just think that's interesting that even I, who
we've wrestled with this. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that like I picked up stuff from Joel's book. I like the pitch, but I didn't really know how it would work. But I trust Joel as a thinker and a storyteller enough that I knew that it would be something good. But when I actually got it, I'm like, I really like the approach here, because I do think that whether you are a terse writer or a verbose writer, there is something to pick up. Let me ask about details from the other end. So we talked a lot about what details not to include, but I actually think that's not your superpower. I think it's your writing style. I think your superpower is the details you do include. You're one of the best idea people I've ever met. So let me frame this by telling a very quick Joel story. This is the first time I knew I was in love with Joel's brain. So Joel came to
not his beard.
His beard was fierce for sure. But no, this was he was at our World Builder event for the Inevitable, and we were talking about like robots. It was pure ideation for 2 days, and I'd known Joel for one of those days, not a long time at all. And the second day, do you remember what this is, Johnny?
I love it when you ask, do I remember what this is? Because I never know. Never.
All right. Okay. So we were trying to figure out a way for robots to have a drug habit.
That's right. I remember that.
Okay. So we needed robots to have a drug habit, so they could be like robots on like there could be robot.
It's like that episode of Futurama where Bender is getting high off electricity.
Yeah, we really needed like a way to make this work. And Joel doesn't sit down. Joel stands like a
bouncer.
Yeah, yes, he's got a bouncer's countenance, and he's out there. He's standing like a bouncer in the room, and he takes 3 big steps into the circle where everybody else is, and he says. He goes on this thing. I'm not going to try to duplicate it, but basically they're data packets, that like, if you got like an upgrade for your computer, it wouldn't work on the same way as this operating system. So it basically just fucks with them. And he describes how it would be like a drug for a robot. And it was just the best idea. So perfectly articulated at the right moment. And Joel has done that time and time and time and time again with our story meetings. We'll all be trying to like, hunt and peck around an idea, and then it's similar to those of you longtime listeners who heard the one time that Dave we were all
it was a knowledge bomb. He was like, motherfuckers, this is what happens. Boom, mic dropped.
Right, and he did that live. What if you did this? Joel does that in our meetings a lot. So the question is, like, you're so good at just mining creative ideas from a group and coming up with that really sharp one, or just pulling stuff from the ether. So do you have a process for that? What is it that you're bouncing off of at any given time?
What I usually do is I make sure I don't say no to anything. If I have anything, any kind of idea, a spark or a sentence or anything, I don't say no to it. A lot of writers, they get rid of too much stuff in their head. They get rid of too much stuff in the very initial phase of ideation. And so anything that I get, I explore. And you'll find that you'll keep a lot more that way, and the ideas come out a lot better. That's really it. I know that sounds.
It's punchy. It's just like, yeah, your ideation style is the same as your writing style.
Right. It fits your personality. It's okay. So let's contrast that with Dave for a second, because Dave's usually the opposite. Like he does start with no, way less than he used to. But if an idea doesn't click immediately with Dave, he's less likely to mine it for something, where you'll sit with it longer. So is that something that it was more learned behavior, or is that just like that's how you respond to ideas?
Well, not to put Dave on the spot at all, but it has more, because we all love and trust Dave more than he loves and trusts himself.
Yeah, that's agreed.
And that's kind of part of it. Is so I trust myself to work out the idea. I'm not going to say, oh, people think that's going to be stupid. I'll let people go ahead and tell me afterwards. But initially, my assumption is that I think I can do something with this. I just don't throw anything away. I'm an idea hoarder.
Do you find that? Do you put ideas like if the robots weren't junkies, if we didn't use that in Inevitable, do you think that would have found its way back to you at some point?
Oh yeah, it's a great idea. Of course it
I tend, in defense of myself, other than my own self-loathing, and usually for me, an idea is kind of like dropping on a spider web. Like sometimes I'll drop in, there'll just be dead zones and nothing's connecting, and other times everything just fucking lights up and it's magical. So I want more of the magical things, and I know, you know, I should be able to make other things work, but I find when it just naturally, like when everything's just firing for me anyway, I tend to come up with something I like a lot more than, you know, banging my head against a wall, because that gets painful.
Oh yeah, I found that with many projects with Dave, where we're on a track, and it can get, the whole creative process is lubricated if Dave feels like he's not forcing the idea. Even if we know that there's a good idea there, but we're trying to find, you know, the 3 steps that will make the idea work, that's never, ever, ever as much fun as, you know, like, okay, what if we did this and this and this, and those naturally fit together? Where I think it's the opposite with Johnny. I think when we have really complicated things where it's a difficult path to get to the end, that's almost part of the process, and it makes it more rewarding. But there's that, neither is right or wrong. It's different ways of ideating.
Well, I think part of it for me is my own mental limitations, because I have so many things I deal with on a routine shit that my OCD brain is going through, and it is taxing. It's mentally taxing in a way that, like, I don't want to also be doing that in my work, where I'm just like, because then I become way too obsessive and anxious, and it's misery. So, yeah. More drugs is the answer, kids.
Yeah, there was something I was going to say on the heels of that, and I can't remember. So I'll just divert 90 degrees. And I actually don't know your like writing history, Joel. I mean, in many ways, a lot of the things that happen in this company are Sean will discover something or come up with something, and then I'll find out that we're doing it. And bringing Joel aboard was one of those things. It's like, well, we're working with Joel, and I was like, okay, well, that seems great, and it has been. But I actually don't know what your writing history is, like when you started writing, and how easy it was to join the troupe that you're in now, and all that stuff.
Man, I took too long to start writing. I wish I had started earlier, and I touch on that in Fuck the Details a little bit, but it's if I had written it down, it's a part the reader would have skipped over, so I didn't include it.
It's a detail. Fuck it.
Yep. Yeah, I wanted to write for a long, long time, and it was really just fear. I just didn't do it because I was afraid that nobody would like it, or that I wouldn't be successful, or whatever authors usually fear when they go to publish. And it was you guys. I was watching the previous iteration of the show and realized I could probably do it myself, poorly, but I could do it, and so I did.
These assholes can do it. I can do it.
Yeah, that's actually how it went.
That was verbatim.
Look at these guys. Jesus. No, I followed as much of your advice as I could, and did some self-publishing. And it was one of the books that I had written was a young adult science fiction book, and I thought it had all of my worst and best habits, and that's the one I actually gave to you, Sean. And you I guess reviewed it, or you read it in exactly the way I thought you would. You saw exactly the flaws, but you also saw the good things. And I wanted you to know, this is what you're getting. You know, this is the writer that you're getting. And he was like, yeah, we can work with that. I was like, thank God. So
yeah, because the thing about Joel is, I mean, obviously you're a born storyteller. You know, you're a born storyteller in the same way that Dave is a born storyteller. Like, there are mechanics to figure out in the early days, but you know, like on just a genetic level, what it takes to tell a story and to engage the reader. But
and a natural ear for like metaphor and stuff. I mean, Joel's use of figurative language is really exceptional.
Yes, but it's not just figurative language. It's the fact that he can, like, I'm good at figurative language, but it takes me a paragraph usually to do what Joel does in a sentence. And that's magical. Like, he could get the same emotion that takes me 40 words, he could do in 8. That's awesome. And I could see that, but I could also see, oh, well, there's a lot of mess here. but that stuff is just teachable. I think what we want more than anything in Sterling and Stone is the people who like need to tell stories and are willing to do the work. And that's another thing with Joel. Like you could clearly see, like, look, I just want to work. I just want to do the work. You tell me what to do, I'll do it. And, people who want to tell stories, are capable of telling stories, and are willing and able to do the work. Well, that's the DNA we're looking for. It's not master craftsmen, because that can be taught.
And I think that's something that, having worked with Joel and Sean writing, that you two have in common is you don't have ego about the things that aren't working. If I point out something, and not that I'm the expert, because there's shit that I do wrong as well, but I think we each have our blind spots, and we each have strengths, and none of us have been well, fuck you. Like we like, yeah, okay, cool, okay, I can learn from that, I can grow from that. And I think that's true for all of us, that when someone points out something. And a lot of times, like when I was younger and I was a writer, someone had done that, I probably would have been way more defensive and had more ego involved in it. And I think that might come with age, I don't know, or just writing a lot.
Experience, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, while you're noticing the similarity between Dave and Joel, if you guys are playing the drinking game of find things that are alike between them, from hiding to their family to big beards to all that stuff, is that while you're listening to this silky voice motherfucker, I believe he is recording Dave's book Into the Darkness right now, right?
Yeah.
Are you still recording Into the Darkness audiobook?
I just completed it yesterday, and we'll be sending the files in forthwith.
So that's some really cool stuff that you guys haven't even seen yet. I sent out, I wrote that Stone Table email this week, if you guys are on that list, about me recording my audiobooks and how I turned this little tiny closet to my left here into my studio, my booth. But I'm only recording the ones that I wrote. So I'll record Story Solution and 10X Author, and later this year, the Fiction Formula. But Joel's recording all the other nonfiction. So I don't even know, like, is Uncle Joel still a thing? For some reason, every time it comes up, Uncle Joel will read them.
It's Uncle Joel. We all like Uncle Joel.
And why is it Uncle Joel? I'm actually not even sure.
Because it just sounds like you would want to be read.
Is that like Uncle Stevie?
Uncle Joel. Yeah, yes.
It's better than Uncle Tickles.
That's a different book.
No personal stories, Dave.
Yes, of course, Dave brought it right back to Uncle Tickles. No shock there.
I recorded the audio for Fuck the Details, and it went pretty well. I haven't heard it, so maybe it'll bomb. Is that
Dave, how do you feel about somebody reading your? Are you excited to listen to Into the Darkness?
Dave's never going to listen to it.
Well, I kind of wanted to do it myself, but nobody asked. And
oh my God, Dave! I was going to make a joke earlier. I'm trying to imagine you doing my process and how frustrating it is. You'd be like,
yeah, I would be. I'd be annoyed.
I actually think we should let him record his own audiobook. We don't sell
but
that.
Not
version.
cut it. Don't do punch and roll.
Right.
Like every time he messes up, we'll be like, motherfucker. And
no, like. I mean, if we could start this now, and he won't even realize that it's been on sale, completed for like 8 months.
Yeah, you don't call it unedited. You call it unabridged. You put a positive shine on it.
No edits at all. And when someone's driving, they're listening to me tell a story, and they just fuck, and they're like, what?
Yeah, I actually think that would be awesome. Okay, so Joel, I have another question. This might be fun. So I know we've been sending out more emails lately, and a lot of the questions that we're getting back are some version of, I'm just curious what it's like inside the studio. People aren't asking us necessarily even, what is it, how do you do this thing? The questions are more specifically aimed at, how do you guys do this thing? How is it being done within the studio? And I really love that question. Yeah, well, I love that question because that's exactly what we're trying to build here, is a very like an edge boundary pushing studio that's doing different things. And I like that it's being personalized, because I don't think there's a lot of value in abstract advice or general advice. And me and Johnny and Dave have been doing this a long time, so we have our perspective. But you were one of the very first people who, came into the studio, joined the studio, and you were there through all of the really, really rough patches where we are trying to figure this out. Like, what is it like to write?
And you're still here for some reason.
Right. So
I'm here for Dave.
is there
come for the stories, stay for the Dave.
Is there anything that you want to share about that, kind of like what it's been like? And I mean, don't feel shy. Like the good stuff is obviously great, but the bad stuff too. Like,
bad stuff is way more fun. Like, go ahead.
I'm telling you, everyone listening would rather hear the bad stuff anyway.
I mean, whether I'm going to say bad stuff or not, I will start with it is a good group of people who are doing good things. And before I get to the bad stuff, we'll talk about how much help and support I have personally gotten and how much that everybody offers everybody else. And one of the issues I had was, and sometimes I'm loath to talk about word count or productivity or how much I do, because that seems to be a sore spot for a lot of writers if they don't produce as many words as you, or they think you're bragging or whatever. But if I sit down and start writing and I don't do 1,000 words immediately, then I failed and it was a miserable day. So I usually end up doing a few thousand words, and the writing was coming pretty easy to me, and I was learning a lot. The edits were coming back fairly positive, at least positive for me that I was learning. And then I just stopped writing. I just stopped. I can't even explain it. I know it's, I would look over and I would see the word processor, the chair pulled out from the table, ready to go. And I would just fucking turn away and go do something else.
Before you finish the story, I have to know if you're literally using a word processor.
He actually is.
Are you?
Yeah, the Alpha Smart Neo 2.
He and Marie both, that's what they both write on.
Wow, that's badass. I feel like figuring out, delving in on that a little bit. But okay, yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, we're talking about your vinyl records, so I think it's all coherent.
He ripped trees out of the ground by hand.
Yeah, I do that too. And then
yeah, sorry. Joel's like, well, I'm injured. Yeah. I'm injured right now. Well, how'd that happen? Well, I was pulling a stump out of the ground. Okay.
All right, but there's actually, would you say that that's kind of where it started, because you were on like a path right before that, and then you had an injury, and that kind of unplugged you for like that fucked with your motivation a lot, right?
It did, because I ruptured the distal biceps tendon on my right arm, and then had some subsequent nerve damage, and it was difficult I kind of had to relearn to type with that hand, and which is stupid because I type with my index finger, so it's not like it was that hard to relearn. But I had almost at the exact moment of my injury, I had almost made a deal with myself to be better, to do more, and I was super excited.
I remember you were like this high, and then like a day later, you were.
That's why you never celebrate. God will fuck you.
That's accurate, but damn, son. But so I did get over it, obviously, but there was still something about sitting down and doing the work again. There was no reason for me not to do it. Everything was still the way it always had been. There was there was just no reason to do it. So I asked for help. I went to all of the fine people at Sterling and Stone, and I said, hey guys, I got this problem, and if I don't solve this problem, I'll get fired, because I still need to do the thing that I said I would do. And we started a channel in Slack called the Daily Fuck Yeah Channel. And it was originally started just so I could post a daily word count that I promised to produce. So I said, I will produce this much. And actually, you said that if I didn't produce a certain average, that I wouldn't be able to join the story meeting calls. I was like, motherfucker, that's...
Well, now, okay, you're whitewashing this. What did you actually tell us to tell you to help you out?
I don't remember, actually.
You told us to yell at you, call you names, say you're stupid.
Yeah, berate me. Absolutely. Dude, yeah, like that bro shaming where you tell your buddy who's not fat that he's a fat piece of shit just to get him on the treadmill. It's like that. That's what I wanted, and it's what I needed, because not only was somebody expecting me to produce, which, I mean, as a company you obviously were, but these were now friends who I had promised specifically, I'm going to do this much and I'm going to post it here. And then I had no way to lie, because in a month there was a book due. So if I was saying, oh yeah, I'm writing all this, it's great, and then the book didn't show up, you'd be like, you're a lying piece of shit, and I would have gotten fired. So that's the thing, that there had to be, because accountability doesn't work without compliance. It doesn't matter if somebody's there to hold you accountable. If you don't comply with your promise, what are they going to hold you accountable to? So
yeah, one thing I really love about the studio, especially over the last I mean, it's been really over the last year, but over the last 6 months, we're really seeing it, more and more all the time, is how unique every creator is. Like we all have things in common, but we all have very different ways of creating, and that means we have different needs. But the more honest we are as a group with what we need to be our best selves, like the better we can all chip in. And so I've seen this like real accelerated growth for all of us. And it's communication based. It's, hey, I need help with this thing. And even though I don't think like everybody else, I need practical help. And you're finding it like author to author to author. When someone else gets their little breakthrough, they're like, oh, well, maybe if I just like tell everyone my shit and I'll get a breakthrough too. And that's been just kind of revelatory.
That's actually a cool point to reiterate. And that is, people at first, there was an initial hesitance. Nobody wanted to, it's difficult sometimes to throw your hand up and ask for help. And I am seeing now that people are less likely to hesitate. People are more likely to step forward and say they need help. And
well, now we have that help channel. Like, as a what is that's not even a month old. We have a help channel now. It's like, hey,
the daily fuck yeah is share your wins, and the help channel is ask for help. Like, that's the purpose of the Slack channel.
Yeah. Dave,
we do have a really eclectic
help
group.
Channel?
What was that?
I asked Dave if he knew about the help channel. I know the answer. I just
despair looming. That's all he ever posts.
I asked for help moving a body once, but nobody replied.
Anyone know how to dissolve a body in acid? Asking for a friend.
Dorian is down in my basement being a real dick. Any advice?
Well, it's interesting too, because I think that, we're going to continue to give you guys glimpses inside the studio, not because it's masturbatory and we want to like just show off, but because I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned about collaboration and working with other authors. If I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I apologize, but within just I think a handful of weeks, we're going to have another one of our writers on named 90, who really kind of couldn't be more different from Joel. So we have a super eclectic group, and everybody approaches the craft differently, but there's just this mutual respect that everybody has, and this level of professionalism, even though we're not very professional and we're not even all that experienced, some of us, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like professionalism in attitude, or a willingness to help, maturity. It's a really cool process, I think. All right. So I guess that's enough. I mean, we've talked for quite a long time here. I actually could keep going. This has been fun. But any final concluding things that we didn't hit, Joel, that you want to tell everybody? Yell at them?
Well, I did want to go back to where you said that you were sometimes indulgent. And I wanted to point out that your indulgence is often not yours. You and Sean both. That it's not Sean coming through with a bunch of words that he wants to show people how awesome he is. It's almost always the indulgence of whoever is narrating. It's the viewpoint character. It's their indulgence. So I didn't want you to. It's not you just showing off. It's usually at the expense or to qualify a character. So, but other than that, no, I think we covered it. Let's keep this.
Just real quick, just so that nobody's like, wait a minute, you promised us dish. Like, is there anything that you want to complain about? Is there anything you want to say about?
Oh yeah. We ought to make sure that we ought to see if there's something to complain about before we close the door.
If there's something to complain, if you want to roast us, now.
Or you can complain about the past too, because that's anything you want.
I don't remember ever being upset or having any problems or anything like that. But when we're talking about Sean here, he has a tendency to have a rad-ass idea, and as soon as he has the idea, for some reason his brain assumes that everybody knows what that idea is. Right next time we talk, he's like, oh yeah, here's this thing, and you're like, I have no fucking idea.
That happened 4 times on the meeting yesterday. What's that?
So then he'll lean to the next guy. Oh, Johnny, remember that? And Johnny's like, no, you didn't tell me either.
You're not all in my board collective? What the fuck?
So yeah, that's the thing, is you will often find out some of your assignments 3 minutes after a meeting starts. And not only that, but you've also learned that Sean and somebody else has been talking about that assignment for a week.
We've hashed out all the details of that assignment. And a lot of the times when those things come to me, I'm not aware that you don't know.
Fuck the details. Right. I'm just trying to be allegiant to your philosophy.
Well,
There you go.
Sometimes people need the details if they're involved.
Yeah, man.
Fair.
All right, so we'll close up. Just a reminder that Joel's book, Fuck the Details, is at sterlingandstone.net/F the details. But I'll also add that we do have all of these new books coming out. We have a bunch of audiobooks that are, being produced, and we'll tell you guys about those, but you need to be on the list. And that's at sterlingandstone.net/stone table, because the stone table is now, I won't go into that story. Stone table is what we call our nonfiction line. And there's a lot going on there. Putting a lot of focus on it. So that's it. So thank you, Joel, for being on. Thank all of you for being here. This was fun. This was good.
This was great.
Looking forward to having more people on.
Me too. Awesome.
All right. Well,
peace
thank
out.
you. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Bye-bye.